My father said, "I always knew you'd succeed." I laughed in his face. I have the texts where he told me I'd fail. Posted to r/relationships. I, 32M, received a text message from my mother 3 days ago. The first message she sent me in exactly 10 years, 2 months, and 17 days. Not that I'm counting. Hi, sweetheart. We miss you so much. We've been thinking about you constantly. We want to be a family again. Can we talk? Mom loves you. I stared at that message for 20 minutes. My wife found me sitting on the edge of our bed, phone in hand, tears streaming down my face. She didn't need to ask what happened. She just held me. Here's the thing about that message. It arrived exactly 3 days after Forbes published a profile on me and my gaming company. The headline read, "From Bedroom Coder to Gaming Empire, How One Developer Built a $50 million Studio." The article included photos of me, my team, our office. It mentioned my wife and our 2 kids. 10 years of silence. Not one birthday card. Not one phone call. Then Forbes calls me a gaming industry rising star, and suddenly Mom misses her baby boy. I need to tell you the whole story. I need to get this out because I'm meeting them for dinner tomorrow night, and I honestly don't know if I'm doing the right thing. The backstory. When I was 22, I graduated from college with a degree in computer science. I'd spent 4 years studying what my parents considered a backup plan while they prepared for me to attend medical school. My father is a cardiologist. His father was a surgeon. His grandfather was a general practitioner. 4 generations of doctors in my family, and I was supposed to be the 5th. But I didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to make video games. I'd been coding since I was 12 years old. While other kids were playing games, I was taking them apart, learning how they worked, building my own. By 15, I'd created a small platformer that got a few thousand downloads. By 18, I had a portfolio of indie projects that caught the attention of professors at my university. By 22, I had a prototype for the game that would eventually change my life. But my parents didn't see talent. They didn't see passion. They saw failure. The conversation happened 2 weeks after graduation. I'd been putting it off, dreading it, knowing how it would go. We were sitting in my parents' living room, the same room where I'd opened Christmas presents as a kid, where I'd celebrated birthdays, where I'd felt loved and safe. My mother started it. "So, we've been looking at medical schools. Johns Hopkins has an excellent program, and with your father's connections." "Mom," I interrupted, "I'm not going to medical school." Silence. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. My father set down his glass of scotch. "Excuse me. I'm going to develop video games. I have a plan. I have savings. I have a prototype that's getting interest from." Video games. My father said it like the words were poison. "You want to throw away your future on video games." "It's not throwing away anything. It's building something. Dad, I've been doing this since I was 12. I'm good at it. I have a real chance to." "A real chance at what?" "Poverty. Failure. Do you know what the success rate is for video game developers? Do you have any idea how many people think they're going to be the next big thing and end up working at GameStop?" "I've done my research. I know the odds. But I also know." My mother reached for my hand. Her voice was softer, but somehow that made it worse. "Sweetheart, this is a phase. All young people have dreams. But dreams don't pay mortgages. Dreams don't provide for families. Your father and I have given you everything. The best schools, the best opportunities. All we're asking is that you don't waste it. Making games isn't wasting my life." My father stood up. He was a tall man, imposing in his surgeon's physique, and in that moment, he looked at me like I was a stranger. "Let me be very clear. No son of mine will waste his potential on children's toys. You will go to medical school, or you are not part of this family." I remember my heart pounding, my hands shaking. "You can't be serious." "I have never been more serious in my life. You have a choice to make. Your foolish hobby, or your family." I looked at my mother, expecting her to intervene, to say he was being dramatic, to be the mediator she'd always been. She didn't look at me. "Mom, your father is right," she said quietly. "We can't support this. We won't support this." I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I stood. "Then I guess I don't have a family anymore. I want you to understand what happened next, because it's important. It's important that you know exactly what kind of people my parents chose to be. I went back to their house 2 days later to pick up my things. The locks had already been changed. My childhood belongings, my old computer, my books, my memories, were in boxes on the front porch with a note that said, "Don't contact us until you grow up." I texted my mother, "I came to get my things. Can you let me in?" Her response, "Those are your things. There's nothing for you inside this house anymore." I texted my father, "I can't believe you're doing this. I'm your son." His response, "My son was going to be a doctor. I don't know who you are. Don't contact me again." Over the next few months, I tried reaching out several times. Each attempt was met with increasingly harsh rejections. When I told them I'd gotten engaged to my girlfriend, the woman who would become my wife, my mother replied, "I hope she knows she's marrying a failure." When I invited them to my wedding, my father responded, "We'll come to your wedding when you have something real to celebrate. A medical degree. A real career. Until then, don't embarrass yourself by pretending you have a family." They didn't come to my wedding. My wife walked down the aisle in a borrowed dress because we couldn't afford a new one, and the seats where my parents should have been were empty. I kept every single message. Every text. Every email. I don't know why. Maybe I needed proof that I wasn't crazy. Maybe I needed to remember exactly who they were when they had nothing to gain from loving me. Update 1. The struggle years. My father told me I was throwing my life away. He said I'd come crawling back when I failed. I never crawled back. I built an empire instead. But God, it didn't start that way. The first 5 years after my parents disowned me were the hardest of my life. I was broke in ways that are hard to describe if you've never experienced it. The kind of broke where you count change for gas money. The kind of broke where you know exactly how much ramen costs at every grocery store within a 10-mile radius. I worked 3 jobs. During the day, I was a barista at a coffee shop, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. From 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., I worked tech support at a call center. On weekends, I did freelance coding jobs, anything I could find on job boards. Whatever was left of my time, late nights, early mornings, stolen lunch breaks, I worked on my game. My wife, my girlfriend at the time, then my fiancée, then my wife, was my rock. She worked as a nurse, pulling double shifts whenever she could. She'd come home at midnight, exhausted from 12 hours on her feet, and find me still coding. She never once complained. She'd make tea, sit beside me, and ask about my progress. "Show me what you built today," she'd say. And I'd show her. Every sprite, every line of code, every tiny improvement. She didn't understand most of it, but she understood that it mattered to me. That it was my dream. My wife held me when I cried about missing my parents. She worked double shifts so I could keep coding. She believed in me when they didn't. She's my real family. There were nights when I almost gave up. Nights when the exhaustion and the poverty and the loneliness of being cut off from everyone I'd ever loved felt like too much. I remember one night, we just found out my wife was pregnant with our first child, and I sat in our tiny apartment, surrounded by bills we couldn't pay, and I thought, maybe my father was right. Maybe I am throwing my life away. But my wife sat beside me, her hand on her stomach where our baby was growing, and she said, "Your parents gave up on you. I never will. If this takes another 5 years, another 10 years, I'll be here. We'll eat ramen forever if we have to. But you're not giving up on your dream. Not for them. Not for anyone." Our first child was born during year 4 of the struggle. I was in the delivery room, holding my wife's hand, watching my son come into the world. The first thing I did after counting his fingers and toes was check my phone. Nothing from my parents. They didn't know they had a grandson. They didn't care. I sent them a birth announcement anyway. One last olive branch. "You have a grandson. His name is Name. I hope someday you'll want to meet him." My mother's response, "A grandfather would have been able to give his grandson opportunities. Instead, he'll have a father who plays video games. Congratulations on perpetuating failure." My father didn't respond at all. They weren't there when I couldn't pay rent. They weren't there when my first child was born. But now that I'm successful, they want to be grandparents? I kept that message too. Update 2. The success. Year 5 was when everything changed. I'd been working on my game for nearly 6 years at that point. It was a labor of love, a sprawling, story-driven RPG that combined everything I'd learned about game design, coding, and storytelling. I'd poured every free moment into it. Every vacation day. Every sick day. Every night when I should have been sleeping. When I finally released it on Steam, I expected nothing. Maybe a few hundred downloads. Maybe some decent reviews. I'd long since stopped hoping for commercial success. I just wanted people to play it. Within 3 days, my game had 50,000 downloads. Within a week, it was trending on every gaming platform. YouTubers were making videos about it. Streamers were playing it to audiences of millions. Gaming journalists were writing about this hidden gem that had come out of nowhere. Within a month, I had 1 million downloads and was fielding calls from investors. I remember the day I realized I was going to be okay. Really okay. I'd just gotten off the phone with a venture capital firm that wanted to fund my studio, the studio I was going to build. I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot and cried for 20 minutes. My wife found me there. She'd been inside, buying groceries with actual money, not counting pennies. "What happened?" she asked, alarmed. "We did it," I said. "We actually did it." She cried too. We held each other in that parking lot while strangers walked by with their shopping carts, and we cried together because 6 years of sacrifice had finally paid off. From there, everything moved fast. I used the investor money to build a studio. I hired talent, programmers, artists, designers, people who'd been in my position, chasing dreams, needing a chance. We released a second game. Then a third. Each one more successful than the last. 5 years later, just a few months ago, Forbes came calling. They wanted to profile me for their 30 Under 30 retrospective series. The interview took 3 hours. The photographer took hundreds of pictures. They asked about my journey, my struggles, my family. I didn't mention my parents. Not once. The article came out. $50 million gaming empire. My face on the cover of the website. My story, told to millions of readers. Everything I'd built, validated by one of the most respected publications in the world. 3 days later, my mother texted me for the first time in a decade. "Hi, sweetheart. We miss you so much." Update 3. The reconnection. I want to be clear about the timeline here, because the timeline matters. In 10 years, my parents never once reached out. Not once. I got married, nothing. I had my first child, silence. I had my second child, more silence. I released my first game, nothing. I founded my studio, nothing. I was featured in smaller publications, gaming magazines, industry websites, nothing. But 3 days after Forbes published an article about my net worth, suddenly they miss me. My wife was the one who convinced me to respond. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to delete the message and pretend it never came. 10 years of silence, and now this? Now, when I'm successful, when I'm wealthy, when being my parents might actually benefit them. But my wife knows me better than I know myself. She knew that ignoring them would eat at me. She knew that I needed closure, one way or another. "Respond," she said. "See what they want. And then decide." So I did. My mother was thrilled to hear from me. She told me how much they'd missed me, how much they'd thought about me, how proud they were of everything I'd accomplished. She asked about my wife, my kids, my life. She wanted to know everything. I asked her one question: why now? Why after 10 years? "We've always wanted to reconnect," she said. "We just didn't know how." Seeing the article made us realize how much time we've lost. I didn't believe her. But I agreed to meet them for dinner anyway. My father got on the phone then. His voice was different than I remembered, older, more subdued. "Son," he said, "I want you to know that I've always been proud of you. I always knew you'd succeed. You have your grandfather's determination." I had to physically restrain myself from laughing. "I'm glad you feel that way, Dad. I'll see you at dinner." I checked, by the way. I went back through every record I had, every email, every text, every social media interaction. In 10 years, they never reached out. Not during the struggle years when I was working 3 jobs. Not during the success years when I was building my studio. Never. Only now. Only after Forbes. Update 4. The confrontation. The dinner was tonight. I'm writing this in my car outside the restaurant because I need to process what just happened before I go home. I chose a nice restaurant, the kind of place my parents would have taken me as a child when they wanted to celebrate something. I dressed well. My wife stayed home with the kids, but she texted me right before I walked in, "Remember who you are. Remember what you've built. And remember that I love you no matter what happens in there." My parents were already seated when I arrived. My mother had aged. Her hair was grayer, her face more lined. But she was still beautiful, still elegant, still everything I remembered about her. She stood when she saw me, tears already forming, arms open for an embrace. I hugged her. Despite everything, I hugged her. She was my mother. She smelled like the same perfume she'd worn my whole childhood. For a moment, just a moment, I was 12 years old again, coming home from school, rushing into her arms. Then I remembered the texts. The locks. The wedding she didn't attend. The grandchildren she'd never met. I pulled back. My father stood too, more hesitant. He extended his hand for a shake, formal, distant, but then seemed to change his mind and pulled me into a brief, awkward hug. "You look good, son," he said. "You look like a man who's made something of himself." "I have," I said. "No thanks to you." The silence that followed was deafening. We sat. We ordered. Small talk filled the first few minutes. Questions about my house, my company, my schedule. My mother asked if my kids liked school. My father asked about my investment strategy. It was surreal. Like the last 10 years hadn't happened. Like we were just a normal family having a normal dinner. I let it go on for about 30 minutes. I wanted them to feel comfortable. I wanted them to let their guard down. Then I asked my question. "Where were you?" My mother blinked. "What do you mean, sweetheart? Where were you when I was eating ramen and working 80-hour weeks? Where were you when your grandchildren were born?" Silence again. My father shifted in his seat. My mother's eyes darted to the table. We made mistakes," my mother started. "We know that. We're here now because we want to make up for." "You're here now because of Forbes." I pulled out my phone. "You're here because 3 days after this article came out, you suddenly missed me. But where were you during the struggle years? Where were you when I needed you?" My father said at dinner, "I always knew you'd succeed." I laughed. I actually laughed in his face. He told me I'd fail. I have the texts to prove it. "Dad," I said, "do you remember what you told me when I said I was becoming a game developer?" He looked uncomfortable. "I was concerned about your future. I wanted what was best. You told me I'd fail. You told me I'd come crawling back. You changed the locks on your house 2 days after I moved out. You sent me texts calling me a disappointment. You told my wife she was marrying a failure. You didn't come to my wedding. We thought we were doing the right thing," my mother said quietly. "We thought that if we were firm, you'd see reason." "See reason?" "You disowned me. For 10 years, you pretended I didn't exist. And now that I'm rich, now that I'm successful, now that being associated with me might actually benefit you, you want to reconnect." My father's face was turning red. The old anger was still there, I could see it. "Now wait just a minute. We're your parents. We have a right to. You have no rights when it comes to me. You gave those up when you changed the locks." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folder. "But you know what? I'm not going to make assumptions. I'm not going to guess what you said or how you felt. I'm going to show you." I opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots of every cruel message they'd sent me over the years. Every text. Every email. I'd arranged them chronologically, highlighted the worst parts. I slid the folder across the table. "These are yours. Every, you'll fail. Every, you're dead to us. Every, don't contact us until you grow up. This is who you were when I was poor. This is who you were when I needed parents." My mother picked up the first page. Her face went white. My father took the second page. I watched his hands tremble. The messages were brutal, even to read secondhand. Timestamps showing late nights when I'd reached out in desperation. Their cold, dismissive responses. The message about my wedding. The message about my son's birth. Every word, preserved in black and white. My mother started crying first. Not the delicate tears she'd had when I arrived. Real crying, ugly and raw. "I wrote this," she whispered, pointing at one message. "A grandfather would have been able to give his grandson opportunities. I wrote this about my own grandchild." "You did." My father was quieter. He read through the messages methodically, his surgeon's discipline keeping his face neutral. But I could see his hands shaking. I could see the moment he reached the worst one, the one where he'd told me I wasn't his son anymore. "I was angry," he said finally. His voice was different now, smaller, defeated. "I was terrified. You were throwing away everything I'd built for you. Everything I thought you needed. I thought that if I was hard enough, I'd what? Give up my dream. Become the puppet you wanted. I thought I was protecting you. You weren't protecting me. You were protecting your ego. You couldn't handle having a son who wasn't a doctor. You couldn't accept that I might know what was best for my own life. The folder sat between us on the table. 10 years of cruelty, documented and undeniable. My mother looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks. Can you ever forgive us? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I thought about the struggle years, the poverty, the exhaustion, the loneliness. I thought about my wedding, the empty seats where my parents should have been. I thought about my children, who had grandparents they'd never met. But I also thought about my wife. About what she'd said before I came here. Everyone deserves a chance to make things right, she told me. That doesn't mean you have to forgive them. It doesn't mean you have to let them back in. But if there's any part of you that wants to try, you should try. Not for them. For you. Update 5. The beginning. I took a deep breath. You can have a relationship with me, I said. But not because I'm rich now. You need to acknowledge what you did. Really acknowledge it. My mother nodded, tears still falling. I acknowledge it. I was cruel. I was wrong. I let my fear and my expectations destroy my relationship with my son, and I will regret it every day for the rest of my life. I looked at my father. He was still staring at the messages, his jaw tight. Dad. For a long moment, he didn't speak. I could see the war happening inside him, his pride battling with something else. Something that might have been love, or might have been shame. Then he broke. It started with his shoulders shaking. Then a sound I'd never heard before. My father crying. Not quiet tears, but real, body-racking sobs. The cardiologist who'd never shown weakness in his life, breaking down in a restaurant over screenshots of his own cruelty. I'm sorry, he managed. I'm so sorry. I told myself I was doing the right thing. I told myself that someday you'd thank me. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw my father as a human being. Not the imposing authority figure of my childhood. Not the cold voice on the other end of those texts. Just a man. An old man who'd made terrible mistakes and was only now realizing the cost. I missed your wedding, he said. I missed the birth of my grandchildren. I missed 10 years of your life because I was too proud to admit I might be wrong. And I can't get those years back. I know that. But if you'll let me, if there's any chance. I let him trail off. I didn't help him finish the sentence. Here's how this is going to work, I said. You're not going to walk back into my life like nothing happened. You're not going to show up at Christmas and pretend to be grandparents. You're going to earn it. Tell us how, my mother said. We'll do whatever it takes. First, you're going to apologize to my wife. In person. She's the one who held our family together while you abandoned me. She deserves to hear you acknowledge what she did for your son. They both nodded. Second, you're going to meet your grandchildren on my terms. When I decide they're ready. When I decide you've earned it. Not before. More nods. Third, and this is the most important one, you're going to accept that I'm not going to forget what you did. I might forgive you someday. But I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. If we're going to have a relationship, it's going to be built on truth, not on convenient amnesia. My father took a deep breath. That's fair. More than fair. My mother reached across the table and took my hand. We'll earn it. I promise you, we'll earn it. I looked at them, my parents, who had been so certain I would fail, who had cut me out of their lives rather than support my dreams, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something like hope. I drove home that night with the folder still in my passenger seat. My wife was waiting up for me, curled on the couch with a cup of tea. How did it go? She asked. I sat beside her and told her everything. The confrontation. The messages. The crying. The beginning of something that might, someday, become a relationship again. Do you think you made the right choice? She asked. I thought about it. They missed 10 years of my life because I didn't follow their plan. I won't let my kids miss their grandparents because I can't forgive. But they need to earn it. Every single day, they need to earn it. She smiled and leaned into me. That's the man I married. We sat there for a long time, not speaking. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, for the first time in years, I felt something like peace. This isn't a story about revenge. It's not about making my parents pay for what they did. It's about something harder than revenge. It's about choosing to give people a chance to be better, even when they don't deserve it. My parents were cruel. They were wrong. They let fear and pride destroy a decade of our lives. But they're still my parents. And somewhere, underneath all that cruelty, they still love me. They just didn't know how to show it. Now they have a chance to learn. I'll let you know how it goes. Edit. For everyone asking, my wife is the real hero of this story. She held our family together. She believed in me when no one else did. And she's the one who convinced me to give my parents a chance. Whatever reconciliation happens, it's because of her. Also, yes, I still have all the screenshots. I'm keeping them. Not as ammunition, but as a reminder. A reminder of who my parents were, who they're trying to become, and how far we've all come. Thank you for reading. This was harder to write than I expected, but I think I needed to get it out. To process it. To see it in words. Here's to new beginnings. Even the ones we never expected. TLDR, parents disowned me 10 years ago for choosing video games over medical school. Became a millionaire game developer. They reached out after seeing my Forbes article. Confronted them with screenshots of their cruelty. They apologized. We're starting over. Slowly. Carefully. One earned moment at a time. Here's what I learned about success. The people who doubted you the loudest will cheer the loudest when you prove them wrong. Don't let them. 10 years of silence. Not one birthday card. Not one phone call. Then Forbes calls me a gaming industry rising star, and suddenly Mom misses her baby boy. My father told me I was throwing my life away. He said I'd come crawling back when I failed. I never crawled back. I built an empire instead. They weren't there when I couldn't pay rent. They weren't there when my first child was born. But now that I'm successful, they want to be grandparents? My wife held me when I cried about missing my parents. She worked double shifts so I could keep coding. She believed in me when they didn't. She's my real family. At dinner, my father said, I always knew you'd succeed. I laughed. I actually laughed in his face. He told me I'd fail. I have the texts to prove it. I showed them every message. Every, you'll fail. Every, you're dead to us. Every, don't contact us until you grow up. My mother went white. My father's hands trembled. Then he broke. My father, the cardiologist who never showed weakness, sobbing in a restaurant over screenshots of his own cruelty. I told them, you can have a relationship with me. But not because I'm rich now. You need to acknowledge what you did. Really acknowledge it. They missed 10 years of my life because I didn't follow their plan. I won't let my kids miss their grandparents because I can't forgive. But they need to earn it. Every single day, they need to earn it. This isn't about revenge. It's about giving people a chance to be better, even when they don't deserve it. My parents were cruel. But somewhere underneath, they still love me. They just didn't know how to show it. Now they have a chance to learn.